So tell me your cozy version of how you got to where you are.
The
The
cozy
love
version.
drawing you forth into this pathway. Let's tell the fairy tale story. Well, hello. I have Teresa Mccarty Herron on the show tonight. We're going to have a conversation about what she does in a specific manner. Now, Teresa works with many different ways of healing. Somatics, particularly the way that we store emotion into our bodies. She has a lot of other modalities she has studied. So we're going to weave this in. You know, I love to bring forth people who are doing cutting edge work with the human soul, the human consciousness, bringing a fuller version of ourselves into our body, activating our full human potential, allowing the soul space. And we do that when we've got rid of the junk. So she's going to be great fun to work with and speak to. Teresa, hello. How are you? You look like it's warm.
I mean, warm. It's not warm here.
No, it just looks nice because you're in the day and I'm in at night now. So
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right.
probably the light contributes. Um, so what do you know what I thought it would be lovely to do? Obviously, we're going to talk about you and your work. So, the story of how you got to what you're doing. But I'd love to put it in the context, particularly the now of 2025. I just got off a phone call with my mum and she knows a few things. She's been entity and possessed for so long, but that's really gone. Sometimes creeps in, but basically she's kind of got it handled now. So I can actually talk to her. And there are certain dissonances, shall we say, that she still has because of the
Wow.
MK Ultra programming. I thought
Wow.
it'd be really interesting to talk about how, so many family members are going to wake up to very dark things, and it's going to kind of boom and turn all kinds of memories on in themselves.
Yeah.
You're going to be
Oh,
dealing with that. So I thought it would be really interesting to kind of put it into the perspective of 2025 specifically in terms of kind of everything bursting wide open. What do you think?
yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. I know a little bit, I guess, about kind of that framework that you're mentioning. I'm not like exactly sure about all of it. If it like just heard some information like you mentioned. So um, like what you mentioned with regards to kind of like bringing the darkness into light is what I feel like I've just really been seeing a lot more of. Because, you know, and I feel like when those of us that feel that darkness are uh it's just this fiery, almost like this fiery sensation. It might be, everyone might experience it somewhere else, right?
Mm.
But um yeah, I just feel like if the darkness isn't shown, then there's going to be a lot of pains, a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of challenges.
I would think it would be a beautiful thing. We can use some of this in the recording. I can chop things and put them at places, but to sort of think about the way I know what you do in the, you're helping people shift the energy blockages so that their body works and their soul
Yes.
can be happy in the body, you know. But so I think not a, I don't even, we don't even need to make it about that kind of outward atmosphere of potential darkness. It could be literally, as disclosures happen, you're going to realize, oh, it was Uncle Bob. I did get molested. It's going to be that kind of thing. And then the memories come and come and come.
Yeah.
Once someone sort of sets the ball. So we don't even need to kind of talk about what's going out there. But I just feel that there's just going to be a lot more wishing, desire, and revelation as people start to the penny dropping. Um,
Yeah. You're
can,
right.
can we start so I don't do too much preamble? And Teresa, I'm so happy because I've had a chance to actually work with you. So I know your energy and your integrity, which is so beautiful. But I'd love you to tell us a little bit about. The life story thing. How did you get to where you are and what are you doing? Firstly, maybe what are you mainly doing now and how did you get there?
Yeah. So I am currently a somatic transformational homeopathic life coach that uses the nervous system in which we decide the homeopathic versions for people. And I found by tapping into the subconscious and the nervous system.
What do you mean the homeopathic versions for people? Because some people know homeopathy, little pills, different potencies, but I think you mean something slightly different here. Can you kind of just
Yeah, you're right about the homeopathy. So what I've experienced as a homeopath and as the patient as seeing a homeopathic practitioner, I've noticed that when you're in a consultation with one for a constitutional remedy for like the overall being, instead of something that's like really acute and just coming and going, like you have the influenza or something, right? So you are in a consult with a homeopath and they ask you a lot of questions about how you're feeling and what your emotions are like and how you could describe that. And um, a lot of people, I feel like, are out of touch with how they feel and how they feel consciously versus subconsciously or even unconsciously is like completely different, right? We could show up and be like, that makes me really sad. But what's under that is actually what I found out is it's anger. Anger is the first emotion prior to the sadness. So a lot of women feel like they have like I'm that makes me sad about whatever the topic might be. Like, oh, I'm so sad, but you know what it really is anger. And so when the homeopath is prescribing a specific remedy for this overall person, the constitution of their person that they're choosing, um, their remedy for their symptoms, a lot of times it's kind of skewed because they're using cognition, the prefrontal cortex, rather than the limbic and the reptilian area.
So that's what I loved working with you. I I knew that I could do that connection because you didn't even explain it. I just knew that with you, that was it. From what I picked up from you, your posts and so on. But I knew that instantly with you, that link of yes, there's a thought, that's the kind of description at the front, but I'm allowed to go and get all the emotions that are creating that thought. I'm allowed to present them and free them. And that's how I experience your work.
No, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Because I mean, on the outside and what we're conscious of is only, right, like 5, maybe 10% at the very most. And there's so much
It can be
other.
so surprising, can't it? I just had this emotion last night and I realized I was so galled by something. And I thought, God, when have I last used that? The gallbladder. It was just that, like, ugh. And of course, that's resentment, anger, powerlessness, annoyance, frustration, galled. And it
Mhm.
was really fun to kind of, completely own it, allow it, describe it, let it out. And then I took it and moved it through so that I was back to my joy. But I
Yeah.
did the journey.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing you enable people to do, isn't it, with this work?
Yeah, absolutely. Right? We like empower others who feel like there's something that's kind of festering and they've maybe used all the things. They A lot of people come to me and they're like, "Oh, I've used all the things. I've seen so many people." And um and what they haven't done is tapped into what's really going on underneath it all. And,
Why do you think
you
you
know,
you can do that? What is it in you that allows and enables them? Because this is your story then. It's like you hold that knowing, but I wonder how you got there. That's a beautiful story.
oh, right. So, I mean, personally for me, like when I was in those homeopathic practitioner sessions, when I was the patient, I had this like, I didn't know when she was asking me these questions, and I was like, I don't know what that feeling is. I don't know what that emotion is. And like, okay, how do I start feeling? And then there was this sense and just the whole multitude of overwhelming abundance of information that was like streaming to me that was talking about somatics. And
So what,
I'm
like
like,
loads of intuitive hunches. Go, here's somatics. What I like that. It's weird, interesting. You kept on being drawn to it. Is that what you
yeah, yeah,
ah, okay.
absolutely. And then, tapping into, of course, the nervous system and the language of the nervous system. And really, we get into, with my sessions, just reading the whole being of a person, even online. We get into reading the subtle cues that are happening within the system of like the being, right? It could be just a little minute, um, just a tiny bit of a movement here when someone starts talking about something, right? Like they may be talking about just a little bit of their life or whatever, and then we talk about, what is it that they are really looking for, or something that's causing discomfort, or something that they are challenged with. And then there's like this little twerk in between the eyebrows, or something going on here, or a little something here. And then we're like, well, so that's the body speaking to us. So the body is the subconscious. And
It
so we speak.
sounds the image I get when you say that. I love it when that happens, that kind of thought transference. So the image I get is, it's this the label I'm going to call it is crack of least resistance, but it's like the body is presenting the outline of a door. You can
Yeah.
barely see the light through it, but it's just saying, "Oh, you think we're talking about spinach and whether you like it or you're allergic to it." No, it's actually something else. And here's the doorway starting to open. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's like I'm popping up, or it may just this be the subtle little itch or the subtle little twitch of a muscle that somebody may be experiencing. You're like, oh, what's that? Or oh, I'm noticing this, and like that's essentially the subconscious that's talking to us through the body's messages. So that's what we do in my sessions, and we just tap into the sensations and feelings, and then I just certainly watch, right, the whole being.
So I'm gonna kind of drill into you a little bit because the lovely thing about these kind of stories, these kind of videos, is that people who resonated enough with it intuitively, they'll watch it and it wakens something in them. So
Mhm.
I'd love to know, what were you like as a little girl? Were you the kind of noticing the way the raindrops glistened on the leaves? I mean, were you a kind of sensitive, fine observer, or did that happen sort of suddenly? Because it takes, when I work with children, and they say, "Oh, I don't know anything," or "I've got no idea," and I can see they've thrown three ideas out of their mind in the time I've talked to them, because you can see the way the eyes change, the face changes, doesn't it? So I practiced and trained that, and I wonder what you were like, or whether it was a sudden kind of, now I notice all this fine stuff. What's the story behind that?
So I think that's an interesting question, because I feel like when I was younger and growing up, I was just really just out of touch with my own emotions. I felt like when I was in these, even the family system, or when you are around even your friends, right? Like I felt like mostly um, it kind of a positive type of child, right? Like not a lot bothered me as much, and I felt as though when I got around other groups or family members or people, as though like there was this sense of like, oh, that's different. What is that? That's not mine. And I didn't recognize that, but that wasn't mine. And I felt like, oh, that's at first when I was, a child until I started learning more about feelings and emotions and energies and how other people's energies influence us. Um, I was just like, oh, I think what I'm doing is like feeling somebody else's energy. And I didn't realize that when I was younger. And I was like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm feeling frustrated or I'm feeling worried. I'm like, I don't think that's mine because I didn't come into this, you know, face to face or into this room even feeling this way. So I do work with a little bit of energy also on myself because I feel like I always notice this as kind of like a medium of emotions. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
because you've got to say I mean, the words you say are kind of opening that corridor, aren't they?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
how I experienced it with you. It's like you're not prescribing their pathway. You're kind of giving them a possibility. And how do you do that? You've got to have some kind of recognition in you that they're experiencing something. So that
yeah.
kind of empathic thing is really interesting. So as a child, so you had this that suddenly there would be these awareness of other stuff, other
Yes.
emotion. And what did your mind do with it? Was it just like you tried to dismiss it as though, that's silly or, pointless? Or were you kind of inquisitive and wanted to find out about this difference?
That's a good question too, because I felt like I wasn't necessarily raised in that environment with regards to exploring and nurturing that side of me necessarily. That wasn't really taught or thought about in my family or where I was being brought up. So it was more of a recent awakening within the past probably at least 10 years, but more recently, more so 5, I would say.
So when your soul, your spirit, however you want to describe it, sort of brought somatics into the forefront of your mind, and then so I assume you gave in. Said, okay, I'm taking the course. What sort of how did that progress? Because it just reminds me when I was employed as the singing teacher, this lovely private school I've worked 17 years in. And in the interview, they just sort of slipped in, oh, could you teach acting as well? And I thought, for a second or two. And then I said, yes, having not ever taught acting, but, done some acting and loved it. And that gave me the ability, the field to refine and hone those skills,
Ooh, yeah.
which is, acting skills are the same skills we're talking about here. It's that enhanced
That's
awareness of emotion.
that's right. Yeah.
So my spirit brought me to that situation, which was somewhat unexpected. So that's what I thought about that when you said like, somatics and throwing itself around me. So what happened then when you kind of like, right, okay, let's see what this is. What was your
Mm.
opening journey on that one?
Oh, it was really interesting. Just starting to really come to find out what was really underlying underneath. It was like a lot of it was just like this version of me or this I sometimes people just call it a part of you, right? That's like just kind of meh. Like always just eh. And I was
Oh,
like,
that word,
oh,
meh.
who is that? Because I've always been like, oh, everything's good. We're all like positive. And like this part of me just came out that was just like this, ah. And like, oh, and it was just like this part, right? When you even speak about acting, right? We act a part. there's this part inside of me that was just really trying to kind of get out and share what it was that was it it was needing to be explored and listened to and heard and what it needed.
So it,
So play around with that part
uh,
of me and the feelings. It was like, oh, it felt just like this meh. Didn't want to play with it. Didn't want to but like it you need to allow these parts of you to be seen, to be heard. Otherwise, there's this tug of war going on in the nervous system, and then there's just looping, right? And
so
we
let's
just
talk about the looping because, it's like, well, yeah, okay, maybe, the people listening mostly can probably tune into this, but let's imagine someone hasn't really thought about this before. So why? Why do we have this weirdness that we want to be the cheery cheerleader and ha 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 he? I remember being told off by a singing teacher. He said you shouldn't smile so much because he could tell that there was some inauthenticity going on. I was just using my creativity to create happiness, but actually I was not feeling it. But how does that, why do we get into these situations of actually the meh is there and needs to be addressed? Yeah, our mind wants to be, hey, hi.
Hmm. I would have to say that it's a lot of conditioning. Yeah. And not being really heard for asking really about who you are and how you want to be or who you want to be and explore the deeper parts of us that have these desires. And probably, to be honest, whoever you were brought up with and the environment, right? Some of that it plays into it. So it could be social conditioning or in the family system, things of that nature, or just even what you are essentially surrounded with in school or the city or community that you're usually around. And people don't go into the depths of like, how are you really though? Because a lot of people are like, oh, your friends or your family are like, how are you doing? I'm good. Right? Everyone's just good. I'm fine. Everything's great. Or it's, I'm fabulous and life is great and everything. And then you're like, well, and then is it really? Is it all really fabulous? Right?
So, okay, thoughts shooting off everywhere with that because we kind of come to that, even though I haven't really let you finish your story, but I'm sure we're going to go in lots of little loops, spirals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so let's say 2025 is this year where a lot of things that were hidden, the meh and worse, is probably going to be let leashed. I mean, we've already had, it's only the 8th, and we've already had quite a few things playing around, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot more. So suddenly, instead of, hi, I'm fine, we're not going to be able to live like that, and more of that meh is coming to the fore. So there's this context of 2025. Now, if this is a funny question, but if you're, oh, let's just make you an angel, okay, because you probably are, right? If you're an angel and you're looking at all these new parents, right, and they're about to get their child, the mama is going to give birth to that baby. What would you want to tell them in your most loving way that they could do, be, hear, stay, say, whatever with their child so that the child doesn't have to have the stated nah?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question because I feel like that's the next version coming through for me as well, working more with children and families and speaking to this for the new era that's coming through for the type of children that are to be born that will be here to enlighten us. And if they have these children that are highly intuitive and a lot more sensitive to emotions, there may be thoughts that, they are dealing with a child with ADHD or autism, things of that nature, and not supporting their emotional needs and possibly, doing some energetic type of clearing and shielding them and really allowing time for them to be exactly who they are as much as possible and through expression, right? Just like completely. So if your child is stomping around and you're like, ugh, that's a lot for me to hear and even see. Like, I don't like to hear my child stomping around, so we homeschool, and when I see my son stomping around, it was like, I allow the part of him that feels as though he needs to stomp around, and we just kind of, it's a sense, essentially curiosity, right? Just kind of observing, noticing what it is that this part of him needs to be expressed, and providing a little bit of feedback, right? Being that mirror for them and just being like, I see that you are XYZ, you're doing this, and maybe asking for a little bit more to come through.
Love.
Right. So if this part of you feels like you're stomping around and you're just I don't want to do that. Uh-huh. And share with me, like ask and just get a little bit more curious. Why? What's going on? What makes you feel like you don't want to? What is it that you would like to do instead? And even though, right, like of course, we need to, in school or in your home, we do need to have rules to make sure your child is safe and fed and all of that. The knives are put away. You can't just go and play with knives. But right, so we need to have boundaries. And when you put certain things in place for your children, for the rules of school or the rules of your home, things of that nature, it's just really important to allow that part of them to come through and still have compassion and love for them.
This is such an important point, I think, because as we, this eye of the storm that we're moving through into something, we all kind of know something else is happening. And we've got vying contentions. My mother keeps going on about those really right-wing Christians. She's terrified of the right-wing Christians in the USA. And it's just like, okay, this is interesting. I wonder what they really symbolize for you. But this thing of going back to something traditional, where the parents are the parents and the children are the children. There's some kind of hierarchy.
Mm.
There are ways of doing that, aren't there? There's a way of doing it with love, like you've just said, curiosity. I'm not afraid as a parent. I am not afraid of my child. I'm therefore curious. I know I'm responsible for that environment, and I'm going to work with that child to see what we need to do to bring through whatever energy is in there. So that's the loving parent. Whereas we've got that other model of also traditionalism of, I must control you. You must fit into this form. And only then are you going to be good enough for the world. And that's all based on fear that somehow it's not going to work out or they're not going to be able to. And then we've got this other weird model which is being thrown in our face, the sort of World Economic Forum model of just like, yeah, just let them do whatever they want, which we also understand is not going to help that person be who they truly can be. So I think it's so exciting to talk about this because this is sort of the hub of your work, isn't it? Really, it's the truth of what is going on in that being, in that moment.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Because when you put in certain parameters for this person that you've brought into this world, that God has brought into this world to possibly be more of our guiding light on this planet, right? There may be some people some babies that are coming into this world that are here to show us things that we aren't aware of, bring light to the darkness, and bring up and to shed through these systems that are keeping us stuck, small,
There. Keep
meh,
in them there.
meh. Yeah. So there, some of that's, if you've heard of human design and Rave 2027 and those light beings coming through, you probably are aware of their, it's kind of like this hive. So kind of like the bees that all just have this inner knowing, or even like the mushrooms of the earth, they'll be sort of like this inner knowing, and they'll have this like, without using words, they'll just have this like telepathy going on between them. So
Almost with synchronicity around the planet. So here's a child and here's a child, and somehow they're kind of both on the same place. Yes.
yeah, they'll be in this different dimension of frequency that they'll be aware of, and I think it's going to be important for a lot of people to understand this, that's coming through for the next couple years ahead.
So I had a child I was working with who was blind, and he was one of the first patients at Great Ormond Street Hospital, the famous UK children's hospital, good or bad, who knows. But he was really good at echolocation. They trained him so with these clicks, he could find his 3D way around. He also had a lot of extrasensory perception because I used to come in and work with his voice, and I would come into the room. He could hear me coming into the room even before I said hi. And he always wanted to know what color I was wearing because he could feel it.
Oh,
So,
wow.
that was always fascinating. We always talked about the sound and the color of certain notes he was singing and playing and so on. So that was a lovely thing to do. But going back to this point of the kind of love hierarchy of the parent creating the environment and the child coming into it, this little boy used to tell his mum off when she wanted to sing because her pitching was not perfect. He had absolute perfect pitch. And not only could he, relatively move anything up and down a key an entire piece, he could tell you exactly, oh, that's A flat or whatever, instantly. He had the
Wow.
map fully complete. And his mama wasn't so versed, let's say. She hadn't got so much soul experience in that. And he was trying to get her to shut up. And I said to her, you've got to, if the singing gives you joy, you have to find a way to express that to him, that he allows you the space to be who you are as well. So he may have had a kind of higher frequency perception than she on that area, but it's like you've come into this mama, she's providing this for you. And this is where this sort of no fear parenting comes in, I think. What do you think about that?
So interesting that you talk about the mom and the voice, that my son has something similar when he's asking me when it's schooling time. He notices a change in the tone of my voice, and we had conversations about it, and he's like, this is too loud. And we had a talk, and it was like, it's not loud, what is it really, when we really got to it. And he's like, it sounds like you're pretending, with regards to how my voice was being portrayed to him. And I gave him some information as to, I understand how it, feels like it may be pretending. And also, sometimes it's fun to, pretend to have different sounds come out through our being, right? So we explored different highs and lows of our voice. And I was like, so he was asking, he's like, can you do it higher? And I was like, oh, so I was like, so you want me to talk like this? Or like, and he's like, No. So I was like, so again, it was like just coming back to feelings, right? So it was more like, I think he was desiring a little bit more playful sound. And instead of, because he felt like the sound of my voice when I was giving him, like, it's time to get to reading, it's time to get to math, things of that nature, he equated that to that sound was the same thing as when you get in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. So this
Or
is beautiful.
like
This
if
is like full circle when you saying you work with your clients and you either get them to recognize or you're also seeing the little twitch, the little wrinkle, the little frown, these little indications. And there's how old is your son?
9.
9, yeah, I had to think. Okay, so there's your 9-year-old, perceiving these nuances in your voice as well he should. But it's really good for us to see this as human beings, that there are languages upon languages that we speak. There's the position our body takes, there's the quality and tone of our voice, there's the volume of it. There's so many different languages we speak.
That's
So,
right.
so when you do your work with adults, let's just spring forward a bit.
Yeah.
Do you find, have you ever had feedback that they have found more discernment? Discernment, I think, is so key at the moment with, understanding how many lies we've had, layers and layers of lives of our lies in our lives. And discernment being part of the energy of your process, I think. Have you had
Hmm.
any kind of specific examples of people saying, oh,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot. Actually, just recently, I had a client who was having troubles with um, making decisions. She would just be contemplating a lot and like kind of struggling with, well, this hasn't worked, and I've noticed, well, I've worked with a lot of practitioners and like kind of worried about it not working, something not working out again, right? And just finding out that this actually stemmed from something back before she was a teenager, probably about 10 or 11. She equated it to that it came from her not being able to have choices to talk about with her parents. Like she never had her dad around. Like he lived at home, but he was gone all the time, was farming, and he never really talked with her. Mom was home, but she was busy handling her boys, and she was like stressed out and things of that nature. And then but like dad was like he was on the farm and like working all day, and he'd come back and eat, and really no, she realized that she's like, yeah, nobody ever talked to me about who I am, how I am, what I wanted to do. And they always wanted me to do what they wanted me to do. And I was never asked to, share with them or have them allow me to make my own choices.
yeah,
So, therefore, because she's not allowed to make these choices, she's stuck as an adult making these decisions. It just like it comes full circle. It was like it seems like such a small thing, and then like just simply the bringing the awareness to it is not enough though. Like it helps in the nervous system, bringing the awareness to it. But what we do in somatics, of course, is you might know that we need to take bodily action. So right, she didn't feel supported and acknowledged for making these decisions. And so, on a daily basis for the next 3 weeks, she's going to take small actions to show her body that she's being aware and supporting her actions that she wants to take. And
yeah,
I mean, if that means she wants to go to the nearby grocery store to buy food for a meal, or if she wants to dance in her backyard with her children, or if she wants to wear a dress around the house today because just because she's gonna choose that. And yeah, so I mean, just it seems like such a simple thing, but really, like when we get stuck in these things when we grew up because of the way our upbringing was.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like the key to her creative reality, doesn't it? It's like what I found more and more is that you get to that point somewhere where that I take full responsibility for myself. It usually doesn't come as quite such a clear decision. I think it's almost like your inner being kind of forces you to the edge of the cliff. It's like, right now, are you gonna do it? But it for me, it was as though I had to create imaginary parents within my mind to replace that which I never had, or let's say the toxic opposite. So I had to then invent, create through my desires, how a father would be with myself, how a mother would be, and then be that to myself to give back to me energetically what I required in
Yeah,
order to move. Now
yeah.
that's something of that you do, don't you? Because you're looking into the library of that person's experience and its storage within the physical and beyond system.
Absolutely. I'm not an Akashic record reader, or I don't go there, but of course I do this through somatics and the body language and feelings. And so when we get into those feelings of like not being supported, absolutely, you give that back to yourself. How can you support yourself in the decisions that you desire? Right, this previous client of mine, or we're in a longer container right now, she's looking to do something more with her life eventually, and outside of being a homemaker she wants to um you know do something that brings her joy. And eventually we'll get into that, but for a while it takes a little bit for the nervous system to feel like it's flexible and able to start feeling like it's going to trust, right? We need to trust ourselves because for so long we've been conditioned to like think and analyze and logistically that's not necessarily, I mean, that comes in handy at some point. Our minds are very powerful, but we do need to take bodily action
So
in
I
the
see this
3D.
with my beloved daughter. I won't go into it too much, but because of the horrendous divorce that they went through, they were then in an atmosphere that wasn't, with me, wasn't with emotional intelligence of any kind. So
Yeah.
she has an incredibly brilliant, powerful brain, and her mind took that, and she's way ahead in her field for her age. She's a lawyer and does extraordinary things. And I also know that at that age that I already had three children by that time. I'm not comparing. I'm just putting it there that there is now the next stage for her is to download, yes, the mind amazing, brilliant, but now to allow all of the emotional fields to be addressed. It's like now she's got a place in the world because of the
Yeah.
mind brought her
Yes.
back. And slowly she can feel safe enough to kind of literally download each emotion piece by piece and start addressing it and bring.
Absolutely. And it takes time. I mean, there's so many parts to us, right? And like a lot of people may feel these feelings inside of themselves, outside of themselves, even further away from themselves. They're like, well, no, that's not mine. I don't know whose that was. Right? So it takes a little bit of vocabulary to start to be able to articulate what it is that's going on. And a lot of it, like, it's really good to when your daughter may start to explore her feelings and emotions. It's really interesting to like maybe take a video of yourself or do it in the mirror to like watch, because you can kind of come back to that and be like, "Oh, well, who's that? Why is she got like her face is all crinkled up, or why is her voice this way, or you know what I mean?"
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's she's with a psychoanalyst, and I know that traditionally that they tend to go in loops, and it's very much the head, but you can see it's her choice, it's enabling her to do something, and then she'll sort of take little side forays as she feels able to and comfortable enough to do it. But I'll also suggest that the mirror thing is great. I found since working with video and producing video and doing all these spiritual investigations, it's been so empowering for me because I've always been that way, but it was just all compressed inside me.
Oh,
And so being able to kind of allow myself to first, first I'm seeing myself either in the act of exploring and experiencing whatever I'm doing, or afterwards when I'm editing and having to look at myself, it's such ultimately an incredibly empowering thing because you can't turn away from yourself. You got you right there in the face. Um, and despite, my 17 years of teaching acting, that just of being recorded and looking and working with that, I've found that's just the sort of power I'm allowing myself to go to has kind of moved exponentially. So it's fascinating that.
oh, love that.
Mhm.
Like it, and just watching you do that, like it just like empowering. So like that word, along with how you allowed your voice to go there, and it was like this very large expression that came through. It was very empowering, and it gave you this like this heightened experience, right? Your arm was up here and it was like very dramatic, so you can certainly see that you felt like there was this part of you that was coming through, and it's like, oh, ready to like really show up and shine, and like, oh.
You see, I've got this theory that the work you do, it's similar in a way. It's that except that I was in a school teaching acting. I had an official role, but I was doing stuff like you to an extent. But I think the future as we turn our entire entertainment industry around, we know that there's some very dark elements in there. Um, but the work you do, which is bringing that awareness back to the self, and all the darknesses can be looked at and cleared through, felt, experienced.
That's
That
right.
that is acting training. We could start to call that kind of work if people want to be actors or if they want to build their confidence to present their work, whether it's, making new kinds of toothbrushes or whatever. I don't know.
That's right.
But this kind of this knowledge we need to have, the self-knowledge. This is a really big area of our future work, I believe.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Knowing knowing thyself, right? And then just I think a lot of it is also, right, like unlearning what isn't you and exploring and learning. And I mean, I feel like I'm going to be a lifelong learner. I've always, after college, I've been in the dental field over 25 years, and
Ironic.
I enjoy that, and I enjoy my patient care. However, I always knew there was something more outside of me that really wanted to share more about the body and how it feels and how you can transform, right? Like it's just ever changing, always evolving, like learning more, and it feels so exciting to me because I'm like, isn't that what life is all about, though? I mean, to me at least, some people may feel like you said, kind of cozy, staying in the place that they're comfortable with in their hometowns and the bars that they go to, and having their whatever they drink every every night after work, and that may be for them. And one day, maybe after you share a little bit more and a little bit more, and they start to see the light, and if they don't, I have a feeling it's gonna be brought to them to the awareness, and they'll, I don't know, I feel like if growth isn't on your agenda for your whole being, for your whole awareness, it might smack you in the face a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like there are sort of two strands, of course, endless variations, but let's just say two strands. So there are of the human experience. There are those who actively kind of like, ooh, curious, seek out the new, the deeper, the wider. That's kind of people like you and me. And then there's the, yes, comforting and taking the sort of hypnotized version of self and the alcohol, which, takes you into that start again loop, forgetfulness kind of situation. Of course, not particularly healthy for the body. So the people like us and the all of the rest of that spiritual energy kind of has this inexorable pull into more, and that changes the atmosphere. Like the fact that RFK is now the health minister, as it were, for the United States. Huh,
Right.
I mean, they talk about complete turnaround of 180 degrees. So
I
suddenly
know.
the guy in the bar with a comfortable life will be surrounded by a lot of people and advertising and things saying, oh, did you know that when you have alcohol, you've got a higher chance of developing diabetes and heart attacks and myocarditis and liver poisoning and, all this stuff. And so suddenly their cozy, quiet, sedentary life is, yeah, nudged a little bit. So
Yeah,
it's
just
almost
a
like from
little
the,
bit like, oh, interesting. What's showing up there? Yeah.
so sometimes it is from the outside. And I love to look at that because as powerful beings, the more we grow into ourselves, it's like, okay, yeah, cool. I feel great. What can I do? And then the what can I do is that changing and shifting the atmosphere for those other people. So look, I'm going to now shut up because I'd love you to kind of come forth with your vision, your vision and your joy for your work, love, what you love about it, what you love to, but what you want to achieve with it. It sounds a bit bizarre because achieve is a very kind of linear thing, and I don't really mean that. But in terms of your imagination, what you see, maybe just for yourself or maybe for other people like you doing this kind of work. Can you kind of finish with that sort of vision?
Yeah. The small goals I would say would be to empower women or parents to start to really explore their inner festering, things that are not necessarily the nice feelings, the nice emotions that we label, right? To bring forth more action into their desires, their true desires, what they're really looking for, why they're looking for that, and what that means about them, what that means about the rest of who they are in communication with and community with and relationships with, so that they're able to bring forth more of themselves into the world and, like you said, just heighten this vibration, right? So that's my smaller goal currently. And larger scale goal, I'm hoping one day to share this more with parents, like in conventions, small retreats, exploring this even with the smaller homeschool communities so that they are able to see if they are noticing these gifts even and sharing these gifts for their children and then for their family so that we can grow, right?
You never
And
have the festering in the first place.
yes, that's right. And I mean, like eventually, I mean, maybe there'll be a book on ways that parents can learn about the nervous system, somatics, and emotions. And it's kind of, it'll be a little bit more mainstream and offered in public schools. And maybe we can, teach others how to do this on an easier level, maybe a few apprentices, to be able to really bring this forth and have it be more mainstream, because that's the way of, not just 2025, but even in the next 5 years, we're moving into the frequency of more emotion rather than um you know in the head. So we're moving into the body and feelings. So that's the future, even though a lot of people feel as though they're not ready for it and they've been shut down for so long. And those strong, quick, angry outbursts, that's essentially because somebody hasn't been heard or validated and recognized when you so much needed to. So it's time to really just be vulnerable and honest with what's showing up and sit with it, right? That's the problem, is that a lot of people aren't comfortable and open to taking a moment to completely just sit with what's showing up and
What did you
being.
say about when we talked about the guy in the bar with the drink and you said something, what was the analogy you said? Something like a was it a gale would knock them over? What was that analogy you used? Do you remember?
Oh, Gale. Oh, just like this wave of energy that just kind of was like, woof, you know?
It was that you said there was some, I can't remember, it was some force of nature you had said that would probably come along and kind of hit them sideways.
Oh, yeah,
So
might smack them in their face a little bit.
smack them in the face a little. That's what it was. Yeah, just a little
Yeah, just a
smackaroonie.
little bit of a wake-up call.
So
Yeah.
I love what you said, and it's so powerful. I don't want to say too much more, but I thought let's just take it back into these two families. The one where the parents see and they are in their responsible parent place, they see, feel, hear, and facilitate the expression of this human soul, their child. And then the other one, this sort of wanting to do beautifully and stay in traditional structure, believing that this kind of rigid structure is what is good. The trouble is that because this other thing, which I'll just call it the dark satanic agenda, is kind of it's literally doing that, isn't it, to everything we know. And I think this year it's just going to be quite a lot more of that. That this model is just not, it's not going to hold water any longer because on that kind of crazy sea, that is going to capsize. So we're going to be kind of smacked around the face a little bit more than usual. So this thing of returning back to the full language of the soul through the body.
Yeah.
Yes, the brain is brilliant and the mind is wonderful, and the feelings are the way we get the information through. That sort of strange new concept is going to start to spread even more and kind of hold some of these beautiful beings trying to hold on to something good and beautiful in a crazy, crazy, crazy world.
Right. Yeah. I think, like you mentioned, that dark, chaotic energy, um, we can certainly embrace that also. Embrace the darkness in order to see the light, right? A lot of people are afraid of the darkness, afraid of, because that means depression. And what depression essentially means is lack of expression or suppressed expression in their feelings.
Mm. It's a very low
So,
life force.
yeah, so when we're looking into the darkness, I think it's a good place to begin. We don't have to stay there for a long time. A lot of people are worried about the depression because they're worried that they're going to stay stuck and frozen in that state of the nervous system. And I feel like if we allow that to come through and make space for it, right? Make space for the darkness in
But
order to,
give people tools, because at the moment it's the way it's treated in psychiatry is, oh, that's the room now you're in, and we'll give you some drugs so you can stay alive.
and
Because
then to suppress it even further.
yeah, they
Yeah.
never give them the doors. I mean, there are infinite doorways out of there, infinite corridors out, but they never, for some reason, in that paradigm, it was maybe because you keep going back to that psychologist or psychiatrist, you stay in that room forever. Ah.
Ah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, I've never been in a psychology or a psychiatrist appointment myself. And I for myself, I've been in one for and with my daughter and saw how it was handled, and I was just really frustrated. I was like, what is going on here? I felt like nothing was ever coming to it. In the meantime, they're, using certain medications that, of course, like you mentioned, it just is suppressing it further. So that when you have these medications, you're just suppressing the darkness or the feelings or the sensations, and then what that causes is a lot of times just this numb, right? This numbing. And I mean, what I'd get curious with is to see how long would you like to sit with this for a little bit. Give space for that, and when you notice that it wants to, just don't make it so wrong.
Yeah. Do you think it's natural that the soul through the body finds its way to heal? Would you say that is a natural thing and that somehow that information has been truncated, chopped off from us?
Hmm. I feel like there's certain points in our lifetime here, this lifetime, any other lifetimes, that we are meant to experience the highs and the lows, because that's part of being human,
So
right? We're
if
not,
your soul brought you somatics, from various places, and then it's like, okay, I'm going with it.
yeah,
That's something beyond the mind.
that's right.
So do you think that maybe everyone who comes to you has got a soul force moving through them that kind of brings them to you because you're going to help them release, experience and release? Do you think they're brought there from how did they get to you?
Hmm. I have never really thought about it that way. I mean, most times people just find me on social media, but yeah, I mean, maybe people are finding me elsewhere, and right, they know me through some other communities that are more local and know me for more um, the change in the frequency, right? The desire for evolving through deconditioning and then finding yourself. A lot of it is finding the ways that you weren't truly designed to be. So like instead of always feeling like you were possibly never allowed to experience play when you were little. Like you didn't have the time and the space, or it wasn't encouraged. And it was thought of as like, that's a waste of time. You need to grow up. You need to act like this. You need to, do your hair pretty and put on makeup to look like this and that and the other for XYZ reasons to have a boyfriend and to eventually get married.
Also,
When, yeah, right? Like that's like that was the whole idea that I felt like I remember just being around. And well, in essence, like I really felt like actually I felt like I needed to be a lot bigger than that and a lot louder than that. And when you when people see you showing up as a more expressive person, it sometimes triggers people, and it's you're like, well, maybe that's the reason I've come here is to just possibly, ruffle feathers a little bit. Possibly make people a slightly uncomfortable to find comfort in being a little uncomfortable, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
I really, really love this. Is there anything you want to still talk about that I haven't brought through?
Oh, I really enjoy the questions that you offered and asked me. That was lovely. Thank you for all of that.
Oh, it's
I'd
fun.
love, yeah, that was so much fun. And it just really bringing forth, I think, that sense for people to start to possibly learn to get comfortable with being a little uncomfortable. And
So big. It's so big, that thing. Just say it again. I still find myself sometimes apologizing when I'm a little extreme because it's still like, was that okay? Am I allowed to be like that? Because I felt that.
right, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you're in these areas or around your family or your friends that aren't necessarily on your same wavelength, and you're just like, you know what? I'm going to be here. I'm going to be in my vibration. I'm going to be in my frequency. I'm going to share. I'm going to be in my voice, in my tone. And, if they possibly aren't there, then you still show up how you are desiring, what's on your heart.
Thank you so much. Do you need anything from me? Okay, thank you. I hope I didn't interrupt your word.
It's okay. You're so sweet.
Oh, so I'm going to put your contact details obviously in the description. So you send me anything you want that
Oh,
I'll
sure.
put in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Really lovely. I just want to tell the audience again that I did have a session with Teresa, and that's why it's lovely to be able to kind of feel into through the direct experience I had. It was quite neat and compact, but it was pretty powerful. The little corker that we discovered and popped out, which is fascinating
Yeah.
because, there is a lot of mess sometimes with this kind of work
Yeah.
because you're releasing a lot of pent up energy, and the mind has to kind of whoa, follow. You know, I've done quite a lot of that in my past, and I'm pretty conscious about it all. But it was lovely. That was like there was this little compact piece of energy that was just like needing someone to pop the cork.
Yeah.
It popped, didn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Very good. Oh,
Well,
beautiful.
I'd love to have you back some point, and we can choose some other lovely topic. I think the family thing is really vital and exciting. And do you know Heidi Pop? Do you know Heidi Pop?
I don't know. I don't,
I think you'd love
doesn't
her.
sound
And
familiar.
her friend Kelly, Mihan Tabu Tabu, who works with spirit babies.
Ooh.
That would be fun. Maybe I could get us four together. I'll see. I
Oh,
think that could
that
be
would
really
be
lovely.
exciting. I would like that.
Okay, I'll work on that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And then if you want me to do an exchange for you so I can interview also you, that would be
Sure.
fun.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely. Perfect.
Cool. Oh, we'll have a
Thank you
beautiful
so
day.
much. So fun to see you.
Lovely to see you.
All
Yeah.
right.
See you soon.
All
Thanks.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.